Hello, good morning. So I thought I'd re-record my sermon from last Sunday, the 22nd. It's titled Formerly Blind. But before I do that, I have to tell you the story again. And it's a bit of a long story, so hang on. Here we go. So Jesus and his disciples were walking through a village, a town one day, and the disciples noticed a blind man begging. And they knew, for whatever reason, we're not told how they know this, but they knew that the man had been blind since birth. So they asked Jesus a very pertinent question, a question that was commonly wondered about. Who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Jesus responds quickly and tells them, neither sinned to cause this man to be born blind, but rather it is an opportunity for the glory of God to be shown. The story continues that the blind man is sent by Jesus to the pool of Siloam to wash his eyes because Jesus has spit on the ground and made mud. It's that story. He rubs the mud in the man's eyes, goes and washes it, he comes back, he can see. His neighbors don't believe it's him, or at least some of them don't believe it's him. Is this the man who was born blind? It's been among us all this time, and some say, no, it's not him, it's someone who looks like him. And he says, indeed, I am that man, and he explains how Jesus had healed him. So some of the neighbors, still doubting him, says, well, if that's the case, where is this man now? In fact, they're so doubting him that they take him to the religious authorities, the Pharisees, in their local synagogue and tell them the story. So they judge him and stand. So some of them are saying, well, this can't be a healing from God because this man is a sinner since he healed on the Sabbath. And others saying, no one has ever healed a man born since he was blind, and only someone from God could do this. So it's a back and forth. They interview the parents of the man saying, is this your son indeed? How can you explain he can now see? They say, ask him. He's old enough to tell you. I guess they were concerned and afraid that they might be judged if they were to claim allegiance to Jesus. So they bring the man back and they have a little more conversation. And finally he says, why are you wondering so much about this and keep asking me to tell the story? Are you his disciples? You want to be his disciples too? And they say, no, we're Moses' disciples. And they throw him out, drive him out of the synagogue. Finally, there's the last scene where Jesus hears about this blind man being driven out, and he goes and finds him. Jesus goes and finds him. And he talks to him and says, do you believe in the Son of Man? Do you believe in the Messiah? He says, well, if you can tell me who he is, I'll believe. The one who's talking to you is the Messiah. And the man says, Lord, I believe. Then Jesus says, I came into this world to judge so that the blind may see, and those who see will become blind. So that's the story. Quite a long story. But I don't think you can miss out any part of it because it's a pretty important, there's a lot of points in it. The healing is not the biggest point. The healing's finished in just a couple verses at the beginning. 7 verses, and you're on to the whole controversy about did it really happen, and should it have happened, and how did it happen, who did it, all that sort of thing, all the debate around it, rather than the story, the healing itself. You notice how the neighbors get so caught up with trying to understand whether this is actually the man, they miss the point that here's a blind man that can see. Let's summarize the story. I've got 6 points I want to lift up. The first is a very valuable point, and that is the disciples seeing the blind man ask who sinned, the man or his parents. And Jesus tosses away this theology of a vengeful God, saying, neither. That alone is a powerful point to hold on to because it challenged all the norms of the day, the understanding of the day. There must be that God causes all things. So if someone's got something bad happening to them, it's because they've sinned. It's a simplistic theology that doesn't sort of take account of all the complexity of our world. And Jesus just whips it out from underneath the feet of the disciples. The second point is the man born blind is healed by Jesus, but he didn't ask to be healed. It's not like the other stories where a blind man calls out to Jesus and asks for mercy to be healed. Rather, he's just wandering. He's just at his side, begging. Jesus sees him. There's the story with the disciples, and just spits in the ground, makes mud, heals him, sends him to the pool to get it washed off so he can see. The man didn't ask. Third point is the neighbors disagree. Some say it is the man, some say it isn't. The fourth point might be that the local authorities consider the situation. Some say Jesus is a sinner for healing on the Sabbath, and he can't be from God. Others say only someone from God could heal a man born blind. What they're doing is they're defending their decision and their places of authority. In the end, they actually chastise the man that's been healed. They blame him for their discomfort of what's happened. Jesus finds the man that he healed, and the man declares his belief in Jesus as the Messiah. But here's the point I'll make. Jesus is the one that sought him out. And the final point, Jesus says he comes to judge those who are blind, so that the blind can see. He comes to judge so that those who are blind can see, and those who see will become blind. Another way of saying that, those who are being excluded from the family of God are included, and those who have been feel or believe that they are included included in the family of God because of their behavior and rights are excluded, left out. Reflecting on this story, I was wondering how it fits into our present situation with this COVID-19 virus and all that's happening in our world. There's the first issue that's in our point about the neighbors is this is fake news. We're dealing with fake news that comes through. This is essentially what some of the neighbors are saying. Look, it's the blind man who's been among us all this time, born blind, and he's healed. And some neighbors say, that's fake news. That's not real. And they push back on it. In fact, when they're sort of faced with, well, if you were healed and you've explained how it's happened, you've given us more information about the whole story, where is this Jesus fellow then? Bring him here. We don't believe you. We probably won't believe him either. But bring him here. Fake news pattern of, it's fake news, give me more facts. I don't believe those facts either. I don't believe those facts. I don't believe those witnesses. The other side of it is what seems unbelievable must be fake. So sometimes we, out in the world, when something is shown to us, we experience, we understand it, and we just can't accept it, even though it is real. What seems unbelievable must be fake because unbelievable things are fake. This scary virus came upon us in 3 short months. And it seems that every 15 minutes or every hour, when we hear the news, there's an update and more concerns or more things we must do, or, it just sort of ramps up our anxiety. For a while, some were doubting the seriousness of the COVID-19 virus, and some still are. We've been able to be safe for so long in this beautiful part of God's creation that it's hard to accept the possibility that we're at risk. As I've said before, this is an existential crisis, a crisis or a concern, a happening which threatens our lives of many and threatens how we structure our whole culture and society. We haven't had such an experience for a long time. The story is told of the virus working through China and Italy and Iran. But we might ask, it's not here, is it? Is it real? After all, there's been no reported cases in Abbotsford. Even now, here we are. I'm doing this on the Wednesday, since Sunday, and I wrote the sermon last week. There's still, like, in that time period, the 5 or 6 days, no reported cases in Abbotsford. There's more cases. The numbers are going up, but none in Abbotsford. There's apparently, as of the weekend, one person in the Abbotsford hospital. She contracted the virus. She was from Ladner, and they brought her out to this hospital. There might be more now. But it's not overwhelming. The experience in our blessed city in this region is that bad things tend to miss us. Forest fires in the interior. The floods on the Fraser River. They haven't had a big, serious flood for many, many years. Or terrible storms. The ice storm, maybe, but it wasn't a big deal, was it? Pandemics happen in places like Africa, and China, India, far off places that don't have the proper health care system than we imagine, or are really crowded, or have poor water sanitation. That's where those things happen, not here. It's most comfortable to be like the neighbors who are doubting. It's most comfortable to be the doubting neighbors. It helps keep us from being overwhelmed with fear and anxiety. Fear and anxiety might be hanging on your soul like a heavy blanket, like a dark cloud. There's no news except the COVID-19 news. And there's nothing else happening in the world. I mean, when I look on my news feed on the mornings, it's just article after article of something to do with the virus or government response or whatever. It's like suddenly all wars and oppression have ended. Has peace come to Syria? Are there no longer refugees on the Greek islands? Our Prime Minister updates the nation every morning with new news, new programs, new happenings, new things to consider. Later in the day, we usually hear from the Chief Medical Officer, Bonnie Henry, from here in BC, with the situation here. There's lots of news. The temptation is to be like the blind man's neighbors. Where are the sick people in my community? Show it to me. Where is Jesus? Where is this one that healed you? Where are the sick people? Show it to me. I don't see anyone. Why should I believe this is real and will impact me if I don't see any evidence? We want to get out underneath the dark cloud no matter what, because being in that shadow, being in that darkness, being in that time of anxiety and fear is overwhelming. We just want relief. Neighbors in our story should have just danced with joy, because here's one of theirs who's been suffering all his life and now sees. They should be running up and say, "Hi, I'm Martha. I'm your neighbor. You recognize my voice? You can see me now. You can see me now. You have sight." They should be dancing with you. They just throw a party. But instead, many saw it as a threat to the norms of the way of life. How can this blind man, born blind, be healed? It upsets our norms. We understood that somebody sinned, probably his parents or maybe his grandparents, that the whole family is being punished. This is the way of God, and now you're turning it upside down. Some of my colleagues have wanted our region, to make clear declarations of what we should do and what we shouldn't do. Cancel church, stop the meetings. I mean, everybody's there now, but even last week there were still people questioning it. And they were looking for the region to just make a decision for us. But that's not the way our church operates. We're a congregational authority, and no one can tell us how to worship or how not to worship. So we have to take responsibility for ourselves. And that's what the board has done. in my consultation with the board, we've made decisions about how we're going to do worship, and we're still working on that. Last Sunday, we used YouTube channel again. It worked a little better than the previous Sunday. We're going to try a new platform next week. We'll let you know what that's about. And hopefully we'll get things to go smoothly for us all. It's so much easier if someone else tells us what to do. It takes away the responsibility. And certainly in China, the national government did just shut everything down, locked it all up. But in Canada, we value our independence, our democratic rights, our right to self-determination, and all those fancy words, our freedom, not to be directed by the government in that sort of authoritarian way. But here we are wondering if we are the neighbors of doubt. Then we go seeking some authority to decide for us. Like the neighbors did. They took the man to the synagogue authorities and said, you tell us what's going on. Some of us want, and some people want, many of us want, just tell me what I have to do to keep safe. Just tell me what I have to do so that I don't have to take responsibility for myself. Our Prime Minister and others have been saying, take responsibility for yourself. The past month or so, we have witnessed pretty good leadership from our national leaders and our provincial leaders. Some in the world, not so much. We have heard some deny the reality and choose to postpone action. We've heard now some suggest that we should pause and start the economy up again. Start over, stop isolating, get people back to work, because it's all over and we're good to go. That's not good leadership. Now, our Canadian leadership has been mostly very good, led with clarity and firmness. Not perfectly, partly because there can't be a perfect response. But they haven't blamed the victims. They haven't blamed China or travelers or other governments. In our story, the religious authorities, faced with the reality that the man had been healed, sought to find others to blame, and in the end, blamed the man himself and drove him out. Denied him his rights. I'm going to pause for a moment.